Welcome in. Jason Priester, AllClemsonTigers.com. Here with you again on another Monday night for Monday Live. Tonight we'll talk a little Clemson basketball, talk a little bit about what Clemson needs to improve upon this offseason before we get to Atlanta next year in the big matchup with Georgia. And as always, whatever you guys want to talk about. That's really the big part of this show. We kind of take it where you want to go. We'll start off with basketball. The three game skids in the past. Clemson beats a fairly undermanned Boston College team Saturday. Did what they were supposed to do against the undermanned team in that regard, and beat them pretty easily. The final score is not indicative of how easily Clemson won that game. They pulled away fairly quickly in the second half, went up by as many as 19 on a couple of occasions. A couple of late turnovers led to a couple easy baskets, made it look a little bit closer than it was. But Joe Girard, particularly in the second half, looks like maybe he's coming out of that funk he was in over a couple of games. PJ Hall had a big game. Both those guys scored 26 points. Even better, seeing Girard knock down some threes, man. He was struggling mightily, and he I think it affected his play on the court. He talked about after the game how much of a sore loser he is, and how he had probably not been easy to be around, during that 3 game losing streak. So getting him back going is a big thing, and getting PJ back going in the paint is a big thing. They outscored Boston College by a wide margin in the paint, something they needed to do. And you don't want PJ spending too much time settling for shots on the outside. He needs to do his bidding down low. So it was good to see him getting back to doing some of the things they need to do to be successful. Quick turnaround. Back home again tomorrow night, Georgia Tech. I think Clemson's 28th in the net currently, still 3-4 against Quad One teams, which is 3-4. 3 wins against Quad One is not too shabby this early in the season, despite the 3 game losing streak. And I saw an interesting stat the other day. Each of Clemson's last 5 NCAA tournament teams have all suffered through a 3 game losing streak at some point during the season, including the Sweet 16 team a few years ago. So probably, it's a little concerning when they play or is shooting as poorly as they had been over that stretch, but probably not something to get overly concerned about this early in the season. Still some time to get things done, and the schedule, kind of lightens up a bit as we start to head down the stretch. On the football, man, that's what we all come here to talk about, anyways. That's all what we come here to talk about. Big off season for Clemson coming up, man. There's some multiple areas we need to see some improvement in. Mostly on the offensive side of the ball. Garrett Riley still got, that's brutal truth. He's still got a lot of work to do with this thing, man. Clemson's got to be better pushing the ball down the field, picking up the chunk plays. They've got to be better up front. And while I do think the wide receivers caught a little bit more flack than they earned this year, they've still got to be better outside, man. They don't have that. Nobody's evolved into that kind of, alpha guy that can take over a game when they need somebody to take over a game. So, those to me, that's the big things. You got to, and it's for me, it starts and stops with Cade, man. He's got to take a big jump over the offseason. Hopefully, Vizina takes a big jump between year 1 and year 2, because Klubnik could absolutely benefit from having somebody, legitimately push him. Competition, brings out the best of everybody. There's nobody legitimately pushing him. That's a little concerning. And Vizina was a guy I thought, I've said it many times here, last spring looked like a guy that still had a ways to go. But oftentimes we see players take their biggest jumps between year 1 and year 2. So hopefully that's what you see with him. And he can, again, legitimately push Klubnik, because you need that guy ready, man. If Klubnik goes down for any reason, Vizina's got to be the guy. So you need him ready. Hopefully he takes that big jump and can push QB1. And hopefully Matt Luke gets that offensive line straightened out. Two biggest things for me. Quarterback taking a big jump, Matt Luke getting that offensive line straightened out. Thoughts on Adam Randall? He had some good receptions in the bowl game. Yeah, hey man, I've always balled on Adam Randall. I think the injuries have really hampered his development. Um, he tore the ACL. Then he had his other knee operated on after his freshman season. He I can't remember if it was a broken finger or a broken hand or something he played with down the stretch during his freshman season. Then he broke a hand again this season. So the guy's not had any luck when it comes to injuries. I thought we started to see him kind of come out of it toward the end of the season. Kentucky, the bowl game might have been his best game. I thought he played well in that game. Um, he's not played as fast or as explosive as I saw him play in high school. I thought at times during this past season he played a little timid. And, that could be a confidence thing. Again, I don't know if you've heard me say this before, but I was told that, when fall camp got here this year, he had a little bit different look in his eye than he did when he got here for spring as a freshman. Injuries can do that to people, man. It can hurt your confidence, man. And maybe it took him a little while to get some back. Yeah, I'm still buying on Adam Randall. I've watched him play a lot in high school. He's talented. He's got to find a way to tap into it and get it onto the field. I'm glad I'm not in Buffalo tonight too. Yeah, I never thought I'd live to see a day where a football game was canceled in Buffalo because of snow. Um, that's just mind-boggling to me. I get it. I understand the travel and all that. It was more. I understand that part of it. I still never thought I'd live to see the day where a game in Buffalo got canceled because of snow. That's supposed to be their home field advantage. JP, all the teams saying their coach was number one. And Bama says it's the board from day one. Followed closely, seen Lanning, Dabo, Sark, Novell, flights booked, canceled, etc. Yeah, there's no way to know who for sure who got the call first. We might not ever know that. One thing we do know is Dabo got the call. We know that. We don't know if he got it first, second, third, whatever. Most of those guys might have been all of them were pretty much all represented by the same agent too, if I'm not mistaken. So that also plays a part. Fact is, they reached out to gauge interest. Did it? It didn't get very far. So that's an argument you're not going to win because there's no way to back it up, man. I don't think anybody knows who was called first, who was called second, who was called third. Um, we might not ever know that information. Any word on Maffa, and if not, when do you think he'll make a decision? I think that decision's already made and has been made for quite some time now. I've not heard a peep about Maffa leaving, transfer wise, NFL wise. I'm not expecting any type of announcement, because I've always thought it was a given he was coming back. So I wouldn't be holding my breath waiting on some kind of announcement. I'm not saying one's not coming, because of course he's got to. Actually, you know what? I think the day was the day, the 15th, right? The day's the day you got to have your name in there. So, hey, that's a done deal now. If I'm not mistaken, the day was the deadline to have for the NFL draft. And if that's the case, then the portal's closed for Clemson players unless they, are graduated or unless there's a coaching change, which there has not been. So you can't transfer out now, can't go to the draft now. I was never expecting some formal announcement from Moffitt because I don't think he ever considered leaving. So if you don't ever consider realistically leaving, there's nothing really to announce. That's the way I kind of look at it. Got to be careful about reading things on the internet. Doubt flights booked canceled is trackable, for example. Like it's harder to track those kind of things because they're going to use they're not using commercial airlines by any stretch. I mean, I know some of them can be tracked. I don't not something I've ever done. Like I know there were reports that night Saban retired that Dan Lanning was in Alabama. Turns out they weren't true. Um, it you got to be skeptical of a lot of that stuff. But I don't know if we'll ever know who got the first call, second call, and somebody told me that, or somebody made a comment, or I saw a comment about Dabo probably got a courtesy call. I don't think Bama's calling anybody out of courtesy, um, especially when this thing was not planned out. It was not known that Saban was going to retire. Initially, when I saw the initial reports that he was retiring, and I knew it, dug around and found out it was true, I just assumed, this was planned. It was a planned retirement, but come to find out, it wasn't. It was more of a kind of a spur of the moment thing. Bama asked their players to give them 72 hours, to get another coach in place before they made any decisions about hitting the portal and those kind of things. They're not wasting time making courtesy calls. So anybody they made calls to, they had legit interest in. That's kind of how I view it. But I don't think we're ever gonna. We might not, or let me say it like this: we might not ever know who got call one, who got call two, and in that order. For example, I think you had Norvell listed. I don't know that Norvell ever got called. Um, I, I know his name was linked to him. I don't know that he ever got the call. Um, I've heard Kirby Smart got a call, Dabo got a call, Lanning got a call. Um, I don't think I don't know that Norvell did. I don't think anybody like Lane Kiffin did. Um, so I kind of like the hire they made, man. I'm a big believer in DeBoer. I like what he did at Washington. He's won everywhere he's been. Going to be a big challenge for him, though. Um, it's going to be a big challenge for anybody that took that job, knowing that Nick Saban's going to have an office right there down the hall. Man, that is a big, big shadow to be in. Big shoes to fill for sure. Odds at landing Ari Watford, and who are the biggest wide receiver targets for 2025? I don't know what the odds are of landing Watford are just yet. Let's get past this. He's going to be here for Junior Day on the 27th. Let's get past that and see where things stand. I would right now. I would say less than 50-50, but let's get past that visit and then reassess before I start making any realistic predictions. But you know, th- there's a reason that Chris Rumpf was hired. Clemson wants to be better when it comes to recruiting defensive ends, and he's going to get an early shot at making his mark with guys like Watford who are going to be on campus on the 27th. The biggest wide receiver targets. They've already got one wide receiver committed. Haven't offered but a handful. Let me pull them up right quick so I don't leave nobody off. I just talked to one of them tonight, matter of fact, Jordan Young. And surprisingly, he told me he's not even gotten an invite to Junior Day. Visited Clemson multiple times last season. He's got an offer. Cortez Mills is a guy that's got an offer. Actually, I said Jordan Young. I meant Jordan Allen. Excuse me. There's two Jordans. One's a safety. One's a wide receiver. It's Jordan Allen from Buford. That's the wide receiver that was in Clemson a couple of times during the season and told me he's not gotten invited yet. But Juju Preston is already committed. He's a 5'10", smaller guy, can fly. I'm not sure they take more than two next cycle. Cortez Mills he's 6'1". He's a little bit bigger bodied guy. Told me he wasn't sure if he was going to make it in that weekend or not. Hold on, let me pull up exactly what he told me here. I don't want to get it wrong, man. I've talked to a bunch of these guys the last few days. All right, he told me he's not 100% sure, but he was planning to be there. Let's see. I've already said Preston. I already said Allen. I've only offered 4 or 5 of them. Heck, they might be only offered 3. And then you got to remember, you got Marquise Henderson. I always forget about him because he plays running back in high school, but Clemson's taking him as an athlete, and he's more likely to play slot than he is running back. Clemson's already got their running back on board in 2025. So those are the targets right now. The pool is very small so far, very small. Again, I was very surprised today when Jordan Allen told me he didn't even have an invite yet, because I know that's a guy who's high on Clemson, has been there at least 3 times since last summer. But he's another slot guy, and having Juju Preston on board, and you already got Marquise Henderson on board, maybe they think they've got enough slot guys. So at some point, they're going to have to widen the net. But those are the guys as we stand here right now today. Oh, we're going back to basketball. If we miss Turney, does Neff stick to his guns? Pretty much ultimatum. If Clemson misses the tournament this year, and you're not like injury ravaged, and you don't have massive injuries or something, he's going to have a hard decision to make, man, because this is absolutely a team that should make the tournament. In my opinion, absolutely 100%. You went out, you went to the portal and got what I thought was kind of the missing piece from last year in the outside shot with Joe Girard. A little bit of a liability on the defensive end at times, coming playing in that zone at Syracuse all those years. It's a little bit different what he's doing now as opposed to what he was doing there. But on the offensive end, I think that's kind of what they were lacking last year. That sharpshooter guy. He hadn't been that sharpshooter in that 3-game streak. But anyways, yeah, I think that's a good question, man. I lean towards thinking that if Clemson misses the tournament this year, Brownell might be in trouble, man. I think this is the year he's got to make it. I didn't think he had to make it last year. I was in the minority on that. I didn't think that it was like a make or break year. You had to make the tournament where he was getting fired. I went and read that letter that Graham Neff wrote to the fan base, like, I don't know, a dozen times. And I see why people inferred that, but Neff never actually said that. He might have wanted to make people think he was implying that, but he never actually said it. So I never bought into the fact that last year he had to make the tournament. Man, it's if he misses it 2 years in a row, and with this team, man, I don't know. I don't know how well I like his chances of being back. I still think this team's gonna make the tournament. I barring something strange, somebody going down and being out for the year or something, one of your key pieces, because they're already missing, Alex Hemingway, who would give them another presence on the perimeter, and they're missing Jack Clark, who could give them some minutes down low. They're having to rely on the other transfer, Boz. I never can say his last name right, Lighty or whatever his last name is. More so than they have Clark. Clark was available Saturday, but he didn't get in the game. Brian Hill actually said after that he probably should have got him in for a few minutes, kind of trying to knock the rust off. But he's dealing with something that's going to be a game-to-game thing probably all year long. think the offense will all hinge upon how improved the O line will be next season. I think that's a big part of it. I don't think it's the only thing, but I think it's a big part of it. I think Cade's got to take a big step. He just got to continue to grow. I think most of us could probably agree that he's not quite as far along as we were expecting him to be at the end of his sophomore year. When you watched him play in high school, um, you know, he looked like a guy that might need a year to work on some things physically and get up to speed and be good to go. But as we saw last year, it's a learning process for some guys, and I thought the game was still a little bit too fast for him, and it started to slow down over the back half of the season. I think Clemson can still win with Cade. I still think Cade has all the tools. He's just got to put it together. And if he can take that next step, and Matt Luke can get that offensive line playing up to the potential that it has on paper, yeah, I think Clemson can make a lot of improvement on offense next year, especially with you know um, Wesco and Moore coming in. And I don't care that TJ Moore doesn't enroll early. That's a guy I think he's going to be more physically ready than Wesco will be. Wesco will have some time to add some weight since he's an early enrollee. We'll see how much he can put on between now and fall camp. But so those are two guys that can help you stretch the field. I think having a fully healthy Adam Randall is another guy that can help you stretch the field because I don't think anybody's seen exactly how fast Adam Randall is yet. I think he's faster than most people think he is. Um, and I think Bo Collins' departure might be a little bit of addition by subtraction. What's the deal with Vizina? Watched him in high school, look really good. Do we keep missing on QBs or can we not develop them? I thought Vizina was just raw coming out of high school. I've always maintained that he was going to need a minimum of a year, maybe even two. Um, he was just he was a little bit more raw than a lot of quarterbacks are coming out of high school. Even more so than I thought he was far more raw than Klubnik was. I didn't think Klubnik was very raw at all coming out, but he just had some things that needed polishing. He just needed to be developed a little further. And when you're recruiting this guy, you think you're going to have DJ Uyunglele for another year or two. You got Cade Klubnik that's going to be there a couple more years after Vizina gets to campus. So there's no need to rush him. The only thing you need him to do is to come in and push Klubnik outside of an injury. You don't need him to take over and be the starter as a sophomore. So I mean, they're able to bring him along at his own pace. But I think oftentimes us as fans forget not every guy develops at the same pace. Not everybody's going to be ready day one when they get to campus, coming out of high school. Some guys need a year. Some guys need two. Hey, look at Bo Nix and look at the quarterback he was at Auburn, and then look at the quarterback he was, last year at Oregon. Night and day difference. Night and day difference. Um, Again, some guys just take a little longer than others. They all develop at their own pace. Um, I I'm not I don't buy into this theory that Clemson doesn't develop quarterbacks. And the fact that the guy that developed all those quarterbacks for all those years or who was the quarterback coach was Brandon Streeter. He's not even there anymore. Garrett Riley's the quarterback coach now, so he's only been there a year. But let's go back to Streeter's days. I think anybody that thinks Deshaun Watson wasn't better as a junior, as a freshman, go watch him play as a freshman and watch him play as a junior again. I think Kelly Bryant improved dramatically. I think Taj Boyd. Who am I missing? Somebody else in there I'm missing. There's somebody else I'm missing, but I'm not. Trevor Lawrence is really the only one who didn't take this big jump from freshman to junior season. So I don't buy into the theory that Clemson can't develop quarterbacks, man. I think Deshaun Watson was a hell of a lot better of a quarterback when he left Clemson than he was when he got there. So again, you just got to give some of these guys time, man. They just don't come in and develop. Don't come in and they're not ready day one. If you go back and watch spring game last year, it was pretty obvious Vizina was a guy that was going to need a little bit of time. And a lot of guys tend to take their biggest jumps between year one and year two. And you got to hope that Vizina is one of those guys. Ryan says he still believes in Cade, and he is dropping the Cade video tomorrow. Check him out over there on his YouTube channel at Ryan Cantor, man. He does some work for TigerNet, Shaking the Southland. He's got some good content. I'm with you. I think it's too early to throw in the towel on Cade. Yeah, I think this is a good point right here. Vizina wasn't playing, the toughest of competition in high school. And that can have an impact on where you are when you're coming out of high school. And he didn't, if I'm remembering right, he didn't have the strongest of senior seasons. His numbers were kind of average, if I'm remembering right. He's got all the tools. He was just a little raw coming out of high school, and he just needed to be polished, so to speak. I think if Coach Luke can get the O-line fixed, it will help Cade make the progress he needs. Yeah, I buy into that. I think Cade at times last year tried to do a little bit too much. And I think it's possible that getting no help from the running game, pass protection being less than stellar, all that stuff plays a part in that. I think, you got a young quarterback, he's putting too much pressure on himself, then he starts trying to do too much and he starts getting himself in trouble. I always go back to this number I saw after the Miami game. I think he got pressured in that Miami game on over 50% of his snaps. And up to that point in the season, it was like well over 30 and inching closer to 40. That's insane, man. So he was feeling pressure. And then you add into the fact you're not getting much help from the running game at all over the first half of the season. I mean, just nothing. And I think all those things played into it. You don't have time to try and let plays develop down the field. You don't have that true vertical threat out there on the boundary who can just blow somebody's doors off. Your one of your fastest receivers is out for the season, and you got another one that's struggling with confidence. Your slot guy's been out for most of the season. Second slot guy playing banged up, for most of the second half of the season. So yeah, I think if the O line can get fixed, it'll help a lot of things. It'll help a lot of things. I just, I don't think there's just one problem though. I think there's a lot of things that still need to be, a lot of kinks that still need to be ironed out. That's kind of what I was just talking about there, Ryan. I think there's some credence in that. If you go back and watch, his high school stuff, there's not a lot of that bad decision making in the hero ball, as we call it. Um, I've been around him a little bit, talked to him several times before he got to Clemson. There's nothing. He doesn't come off as an egotistical guy at all. I've seen a bunch of people, imply that he's egotistical and wants to be the hero. I'm not buying into that train of thought. I kind of lean towards thinking it's more about what you're talking about here. The game being too fast for him still a little bit, not getting any help from the running game, no downfield passing game, man. You're not getting the pass protection. Maybe, that leads to a young quarterbacks thinking he's a young quarterback who's routinely been known for being able to do it all. Now he's trying to do it all at this level too, and is learning a hard lesson. I agree. I still believe in Cave. He's got to get better seeing the entire field. I've seen a good bit of times when there's been wide receivers open. He just didn't see them. Oh, yeah. I've talked about that ad nauseum here. It's been many times there was wide receivers open and he don't even look their way, much less see them. I'm telling you, man, when I went back and watched the replay of the Wake Forest game, I would almost swear that they were only giving him one read. You know, there's no way to know that for sure, but man, that's what it looked like. Um, there was, golly, I lost count how many times Troy Stellato was wide open down the field, and Klubnik doesn't even look to that side. And Stellato's throwing his hands up like, man, what the heck? It was more than a few. Couple times in the Gator Bowl. Yeah, Tickle Tiger confirms it. Today is the last day to declare. So I wouldn't, again, like I said earlier, I wouldn't be expecting an official announcement from Maffa because, you know, if you never considered leaving, there's nothing really to announce. And I don't think he ever really considered. I know he did last year. And I'll be honest with you, man, I'm kind of anxious to see what he does as the guy, not as 1A or 1B. I'm kind of anxious to see what he does as running back number one. Um, Anybody that's heard me talk about Maffa since he was a senior in high school, or since the first time I watched this film, knows how much I've liked that kid and how much I thought he was probably the more well-rounded back on Clemson's team. No knock on Will Shipley. I just think Maffa's the more well-rounded back. The only thing he's lacking is that, you know, that extra gear to hit the home runs. What's up, my man Nick? Yes, sir. Every Monday, right here at 7, even in the off season. Appreciate you being here. Do you see any players on Alabama, Washington, Arizona rosters that Clemson may go after since they get extended portal deadlines? Clemson doesn't have much room right now. But I'm telling you, I am not shutting the door on them taking an end before next season from the portal. We'll see. I am not closing that door completely. I think it's an area of need. They might wait till after spring and see what they've got and see what Chris Rump thinks. Caden Story was taking snaps at end during the first bowl practice we were at. Um, so maybe he's an option to move outside. You know, Woods can play outside. I'm not a big fan of doing that. I'm not saying he can't do it. I think he probably play well on the edge. I just think he's more suited to play on the interior. Um, I think that's his strong suit as opposed to playing outside. We'll see what they do. I would be shocked if they took one now. Um, but I'm not completely closing the door on them taking one after spring. And you know, if the right guy became available, maybe they would make a run at somebody before the February signing day. I wouldn't bet on it. It would surprise me, but I'm definitely not shutting the door on them taking an end before, you know, when the next window opens after spring practice. Who do you think would be the number two back behind Moffa next year? Haynes or maybe Green? It will also be interesting to see how ready Ajamame is next year. Yeah, I think that's the question. Where is Ajamame? Um, the answer to that's going to have an impact on who is the guy behind Moffa. I'm ready to see what Haynes can do. Because again, as much as I like Maffa, he's not that home run threat. I think Jay Haynes is. Not sure Jarvis Green is, but I think Jay Haynes is. Um, I think Jarvis Green's a solid back. I don't think he's got the speed that Haynes has or that Ajama May has. Again, Ajama may run like a 10.9 in the 100. I think I've said that here a few times, but man, he can move. He's got legit speed. Jay Haynes has got legit speed. Haynes is more of a. I'm curious to see what he's going to weigh, you know, come to weigh in next year. He's still a little on the lean side, but he could be a good change of pace guy. If I had to bet right now, I don't know. I might would ride with Ajamame because I think Maffa's going to get the bulk of the work, but there's going to be somebody else to get some carries. I think Haynes is going to be one of those guys, and I think Ajamame is going to be one of those guys. The situation might dictate who it is. Says he wants Cortez Mills from Homestead. Yeah, hey, he's a good player, man. I like Cortez. His film's impressive. I watched him at camp over the summer. He's he's got some burst. He's got some twitch. He's explosive and he's got very soft hands. Um, Not the biggest of guys, 6'1", 6'2", something like that. But, the game's kind of gravitating towards a little bit smaller receivers, anyways. Somebody asked me about Davis Sanders. I think it was Brady. No word. It does not sound like Davis Sanders will be visiting Clemson on Junior Day, and I think that's very telling. Very telling. Um, I don't think he is, anyways. Not that I've heard. I don't think that might not be cemented in stone just yet. We're still 2 weeks away. I think it's, obviously it's not do or die to get him here that weekend, but I think it's pretty critical. You want to get him here and get him and Luke in front of each other on campus. I think Clemson's got a lot of ground to make up right now when it comes to Sanders. A lot of ground. Um, Jalen Beckley's going to be is one of the offensive linemen that's going to be here for Junior Day. He told me last week he was coming. 4-star out of Texas. Hasn't been to Clemson since camp over the summer, but only because he lives in Texas and is so far away. It made it hard for him to try to get to a game with his schedule and stuff this year. He's a guy that I keep in contact pretty regularly with. If he could have made it work, he'd been in Clemson for a game. But he's a guy I could see ending up in this class, man. When you speak with him and you have a conversation with him, he just feels like he fits everything Clemson's kind of looking for. Um, when it comes to these guys, he's not somebody that's out there that's got his hand out looking for the highest payday. Um, Culture's a big thing with him. His faith's a big thing with him, man. He's a good kid. He's a real good kid, real humble. Um, I could see him being a part of this class. Mal Waldrop, another offensive lineman, told me last week he's going to be here that weekend from Alabama. I think his granddad played at Clemson. Also had family that played at Alabama. Max Buchanan's told me he's got a death in the family that's going to prevent him from getting here that weekend. Let's see who else of the offensive linemen that I have talked with. Might be all of them. So we'll see if there's a few more as we get closer. Still, there's going to be a lot more names come out as we get closer to this thing. Yeah, Preston, Juju Preston and Jordan Allen. Yeah, two slot guys, very similar. So they might be moved on from him. And I hate it because I like Jordan Allen. I think he's going to be a good player for somebody. But sometimes it's first come, first serve. We keep Cole Turner over blue chip. Time to grow, not settle. Yeah, you're not going to see Dabo kick a sophomore to the curb to go to the portal, man. It's just not going to happen. If you're waiting on that, I wouldn't be holding my breath. Do you think it's just him not being Watson or Lawrence? Do you think it's coaching, switching offense, or something else? Yeah, hey, we're going back to Klubnik here. Yeah, we hadn't even talked about learning two offenses in 2 years. I hadn't even mentioned that. So that probably plays a part in this thing too. Even though Riley's offense is a little bit more simplified, it's not as much to learn. Um, there's he kind of talked specifically going into last year. They go, how they thin down the game plan a lot for each game. Yeah, I think that plays a part too. But I do think it's more about him not being Watson or Lawrence, and not everybody. Clemson got very fortunate to get two generational quarterbacks kind of back to back. I know you had Kelly Bryant sandwiched in between them for a year, but basically back to back. And well, I think Cade Klubnik's got a pretty high ceiling. I wouldn't call him a generational quarterback by any stretch. I just wouldn't. That's not a knock on him. That's just how good those other two guys were. Um, again, I mentioned Bo Nix earlier. Heck, look at Joe Burrow. He's another guy that needed some time to develop. He wasn't ready as a freshman. You can find example after example after example of quarterbacks who are much better as sophomores or juniors than they were as freshmen. In the portal, in the NIL era, coaches are being kind of forced into playing guys earlier than they might otherwise would have. A perfect world. DJ works out, stays another year, and you don't have to have Cade start till he's a junior. But that era is long gone, man. Guys are leaving after 3 years, even before the NIL and portal. But that is the plan for Vizina, though. You want him to have a couple of years to develop before you have to turn it over to him as the starter. But back to Klubnik, I do think that people, including myself, I think most would have assumed or bet on him being further along than he is right now. Maybe having to learn, maybe the new, two offenses in 2 years is something that's stunning him a little bit. But we saw last year why they were so hesitant to turn it over to him as a freshman when DJ was struggling. I believe most of our linemen need to trim down a little. They are mostly highly touted guys, and I think they move a little bit better at 15, 20 pounds lighter. I'm more of the opinion Clemson's been a little undersized on the offensive line. That was one thing Thomas Austin wanted to do. He wanted to get bigger up front and a little more athletic. To me, it's not about so much about trimming down. Those guys, it ain't like those guys weigh 320, 330. Most of them are around 300. They're maybe not quite as athletic for what Garrett Riley wants to do on offense. He likes to get those guys out pulling and get them out moving in space, and they look a little bit slow to do it, or they look a little bit slow when they're trying to do it. I don't know if dropping weight's the answer to that, because when you start dropping weight, you start getting a little bit not quite as strong. So I don't know if you want them dropping 15, 20 pounds. That'll put your offensive lineman A bunch of them at 270, 275, and I definitely don't think that's the recipe for success. I think you got to get a little. I think it's got to start with recruiting, and you got to start, you know, maybe getting a little bit bigger and a little bit more athletic, making sure you're getting the guys that can run the offense that you want to run. Um, Maybe some of the guys they recruited in the past before Garrett Riley got to Clemson don't really aren't as good of a fit in what Riley wants to do as they would have been in the old Clemson offense. Um, I do think that plays a part. I think the whole offense would be better with a whole year under Garrett. Cade said it. He didn't just have the players to teach the offense; he had to teach the coaches too. Yeah, Cade said that. I'll tell you another thing Garrett Riley said during the season when asked why his offense didn't resemble at Clemson this year wasn't resembling the offense he had at TCU last year. He pretty much said it was because he didn't have the same talent. um, but yeah, I do think getting another playmaker on the outside um, will help. I see some guys arguing over the wide receivers in the comments, and uh, whoever said you don't ever know until you see it. That is very true. You don't know who's going to be a success until they get out there and do it. You don't know who might blow out a knee on day one of spring practice or day one of fall camp. Until they get out there and do it, you just don't know. Nobody is a lock to be an immediate success. I lean towards thinking one of those wide receivers will be, probably both, but I think one of them at least will be. Um, and I think if you can find a way to keep your other receivers healthy, it helps you a whole lot. But back to your original point, yeah, I think having a year in the new system under the belts helps everybody. Um, Another thing Riley talked a lot about was, reps. That was the best way to learn his offense was just to rep it. And that's what they do in practice, man. They just rep the same things, over and over and over and over. They wanted to get, kind of branded into your mind. So yeah, that's another good point too. I do think there's always going to be a learning curve when there's a new scheme installed. And I know there's a lot of people that think there wasn't a new scheme installed, but there was. So there's always going to be that learning curve, and it's always going to be a little bit less bumpy in year two as opposed to year one. Y'all argue away, man. Y'all not hurt my feelings. CV was more of a runner, also. You know what? He is. That is one thing about Klubnik that I have been a little surprised by. I thought he's going to be a bit better runner in this offense than he has been. He's got some straight line speed, but man, he doesn't have a whole lot of wiggle, and he goes down rather easily. I think he needs to add some strength over the offseason to kind of help in that regard. But I don't think he's ever going to be some dynamic playmaker running the football. I think Chris Vizina can help bring a little bit of that back. I think he's deceptively quick. He's a little faster than he would probably you if you looked at him, he's probably faster than you think he is. He's athletic, he's mobile, he moves around well. Yeah, he can run with the football, absolutely. Can we get the jet sweep back with Brown? That preaching to the choir, brother. I would love to see some more jet sweeps again. For a couple of years there, I'm not sure you really had the guys that could really excel doing that kind of stuff. But man, I think you got one or two now that can. Tyler Brown being one. Cade needs to find his best players quicker too. Yeah, that's another thing I hadn't touched on. Sometimes when he does have time, he holds on to it too long. For some reason, Stellato is sometimes invisible to him. Often, other times, he tries to put him in a body cast. Yeah, if he doesn't get those throws over the middle, if he doesn't learn how to get those things down a little bit lower, he's going to get somebody hurt, man. He leaves some guys hanging out to dry. Absolutely. And there were I said it earlier. There were several times during the season that Stellato was wide open down the field and never got looked at. But it wasn't just him, man. I seen Bo Collins a couple of times wide open and never get looked at. Um, it wasn't just Stellato. Cade's got to get better at a lot of things: scanning the field, getting the ball out quicker, reading defenses. You know, he's just got to keep growing his overall game, everything that goes along with playing quarterback. FSU reloading, but they got DJ. This one is that this is a move that intrigues me. It it tells me that Florida State could not get who they wanted. Anybody that thinks DJ Uiagalelei was Florida State's top choice at quarterback, I I don't think there's anybody behind that, right? I don't think nobody believes that. I am going to be interested to see exactly how he fits into that offense, man, and how they kind of you know scheme it to fit some of his strong suits. Because I kind of think DJ is what he is at this point. I think he is what we saw him as. I think he is what we saw in his last season at Clemson, what we saw last year at Oregon State. You look at those numbers; they're eerily similar. Um, I know there was two different offenses, but the numbers were eerily similar. I am very intrigued by that, and I think Clemson's got to go to Tallahassee next year, right? That should make for a very fun weekend. Getting excited to see Jay Haynes is running back too. Also, yeah, hey, he's another one that I talked up last year. Everybody called him a fallback option and talked about how CJ Spiller can't recruit, can't land no guys, yada yada yada. Well, he goes out and finds this kid who nobody had heard of, plays at a small teeny school in Alabama. Nobody had heard of this kid until Clemson offered him. Um, you know, it, I think he's got a extremely high ceiling. Maybe not as an every down back, but man, he could do very well in a change of pace role or number two role or whatever. We'll see, where he is weight wise and those kind of things come fall. But um, you know, he's explosive. He's got extremely good field vision. There's a lot to like about that kid. I think, you know, calling him a fallback option, I get the thinking behind it, but you can tell when people have never watched a kid play. Every Monday we try to talk basketball and baseball, football takes her. Hey, don't worry, man. The closer we get to baseball, the more baseball we're gonna talk. I am I'm a big baseball guy, man. More so, baseball was my sport growing up. I love it. I love it with a passion. Man, I give me baseball over anything. So we not far from starting to talk a lot of baseball, man. I think we're 32 days away from opening day, and we about 3 weeks at the most where we start diving into baseball. I've I'm excited about the baseball team, man. I love Eric Bakich. I think Graham Neff knocked it out of the park with that hire. He is very detail oriented, man. He makes those kids earn it all. Um, He makes those kids earn the right to the equipment. I mean, he's that kind of coach. And I think that's going to lead to a different kind of culture in the locker room as opposed to what you had with Monty Lee. Not saying Monty Lee had a terrible culture or anything, because I don't believe he did. I just think this is going to be different. I think it's going to be better. I think it's going to lead to better results. Heck, we saw that in year one. And, you know, he put a heck of a staff together with Jimmy Ballinger, one of the best pitching coaches in the country. And to me, that was always my knock on Monty. He had his wagon hitched to Andrew C., and those pitchers never really developed. And I think we're going to see a stark contrast in how pitchers develop now compared to how they developed under Monty's watch. And Bellinger's got some talent to work with on that staff, man. I can't wait to see what guys like a guy like Austin Gordon's going to do this year. Now that he's been learning from Bellinger for a year now. He very well could be the ace of that staff this year. I can't wait to see what Billy Barlow does now that he's back healthy. There's a freshman pitcher, Aiden Knack or whatever, however you say his last name. I think he's going to be really good. A transfer they brought in from Michigan, Obertop, who can play first base, or catch, or DH, gives you a big bat in the middle of the lineup, and that Purify, the infielder they brought in, is a young guy. See how much he plays as a freshman, because they brought in a couple transfer middle infielders too. But there's a lot to like about this baseball team, man. And we'll dive into that more as we get closer. Do you think Clemson's done recruiting for 2025? If you're asking me about 2024, then yeah. I don't think you're going to see them add anybody else, on February signing day. 2025 is really just getting started. And they've already got 7, 8 commitments already. You're gonna have to forgive me, man. I've been a little bit under the weather last night and today. Yeah, 7 commitments already. They've got a wide receiver who we talked about early in Juju Preston. They're going to take 1 running back. Already got him. 4-star Gideon Davison. He's one of the top 5 backs in the class. Probably take 2 defensive tackles, depending on who leaves after next year. Mari Adams is already on board. The kid from South Florence, he's a top 100 talent. Probably take 3, 4 offensive linemen. You already got one of those on board. 4-star Easton Ware. You got your tight end already on board. Logan Brooking, 3-star kid out of Georgia. And then Marquise Henderson, the in-state kid who they're taking as an athlete. He plays running back there at Belton Homeopath. Dynamic. Kid is dynamic with the ball in his hands. I lean towards thinking you might see him playing slot. But that's going to be something that they decide on once he gets to campus. And then, of course, they've already got their quarterback on board, Blake Hebert. And as it stands right now, they're only taking to 1. They've told Hebert they're only taking to 1. We'll see if those plans change later on. But, 2025 is just getting started. Their Elite Junior Days on the 27th. That'll be the first big recruiting event of this calendar year. And then you'll have visits throughout, February will be kind of a dead period. Then can't remember the exact dates, but then it'll open back up into spring. Kids will start visiting schools for spring practice. And then as you head into summer, you got camps. Kids will make the rounds and make their way one camp to the next. Clemson typically holds their camps in that first week in June. Then they have that big official visit weekend, first weekend in June. So 2025 is just getting started. Good. One thing I will add to that, already having, so many guys committed in the 2025 class, that's a very good start. Right now it's already a top 10 class, and you got one foot in the door with a bunch of highly touted guys. And I think now that you got Matt Luke in place at offensive line, Chris Rump defensive end, I think you're going to start seeing the results of those hires in this class. Thoughts on Riley to Arizona as head coach? I don't see it. That would very much surprise me. We want Cam Strong, DB from TL Hannah. I talked to him. I touched base with him the other day. He doesn't have an offer yet, but I talked to him a little bit. Right before Christmas, he had just visited, and he told me that they had told him, he might be getting an early Christmas present, and he was thinking an offer might be on the way. Still not. I'm not saying one's not coming, but maybe it didn't come as quite as quick as he thought it might be coming. Um, he is definitely a guy to keep an eye on in this class. But this junior day coming up will be for kids that already have offers. And he does not have one yet, so he doesn't have an invite. "2025 class look like so far? Who all is coming to junior day?" Yeah, I just touched on the 2025 class, and I'm actually going to write up something tonight. If you look on the site, um, I think I did 2 or 3 updates last week with who's coming to junior day. I'm gonna do another one tomorrow. I'm putting them out as soon as I get the names. But you got guys like Ari Watford, defensive ends coming. Bryce Davis, defensive lineman's coming. Um, there's one of them other. Oh golly, I can't remember off the top of my head. Elijah Griffin's coming, defensive end. Another big time defensive end. He's gonna be a hard one to pull out of Georgia, but he's coming. Um, those are probably the 3 biggest names at this point off the top of my head. If you go back and rewatch the show at the top of the show, I rattled off a bunch of names that are coming. I went down the list that I know of. Um, Cortez Mills is a guy who told me he was planning on coming, but wasn't 100% sure yet. But yeah, I touched on that at the top or close to the top. Dabo was running the offense. He needs to give it to Riley. If Riley was running the offense, he needs to make serious changes about as far, just leave simple. Riley ran the offense. Cade was the number 2 recruit in the nation. He sat behind a good mentor and DJ. No reason why he shouldn't be a Heisman candidate these next few seasons. He was also the number 2 QB in a class full, not the strongest of QB classes. Again, guys develop at different paces. Not everybody's going to be ready day one. I agree. Cade needs to take a big jump between what we saw at last year and where he needs to be next year. I don't think anybody. I think most would have thought he was going to be further ahead than he is right now. I don't think recruiting rankings have any translation to whether or not he should be a Heisman candidate. Um, I didn't see anything last year that makes me think he's going to be a Heisman candidate next year. I think he's got all the tools that could lead the offense to being successful if he gets the help from the guys up front, gets the help from the running game, gets the help from the guys out wide. and makes the needed improvements he needs to make within himself. And I don't know if he's going to be a Heisman candidate. You've been around long enough. We moved from football to baseball. Is Cam shortstop or center field? I actually asked Eric about this back in the fall. He said Cam was going to be the center fielder. Cam was the center fielder when I watched him play an exhibition against Coastal back in the fall. So I am pretty confident saying Cam's going to be a center fielder. They brought in a couple of transfers to play the middle infield, and I can't remember the names off the top of my head right this second. But and then you also got the freshman Jaden Purify, who signed, who I think he's going to be pretty good. He played a little bit in the second exhibition scrimmage I watched. So I'm pretty confident saying that Cam's going to remain in center. Zach says we got a poll live on YouTube, live on Twitter. Don't forget, me and Zach will be right back here Wednesday night, 7 o'clock. Paul talk. Anything we don't talk about tonight, we can talk about it then. Pickle Tiger says, just hearing DeBoer reached out to Mike Reed. I don't have any idea about that. I've been on here doing this. I know Georgia's reached out to him a couple times in the last few years. We know you want to talk about Clemson soccer. It's in your DNA. I'll watch paint dry before I watch soccer. I just can't do soccer, man. I know it's just not my thing, man. I know a lot of people that love soccer. I've tried and I just can't get into it. Think Cade played better in a 2-minute style offense, just like that last drive in the bowl game. Yeah, I think Cade played better in the 2-minute. He's not having to think as much, you know, when he's playing fast and they're taking advantage of tempo. That's something that I thought we'd see more of this year. But at the same time, if you want to push tempo, man, you got to pick up first downs consistently. And this is an offense that struggled to do that at times. But even when they were doing it, they weren't pushing the tempo a lot. That's something I'd like to see them do a little bit more of next year, because I do think Cade plays a little bit better when they're playing fast. Don't forget, if you have not hit that subscribe button, please do so. We would very much appreciate it. Hit that like button as well. Yes, Henderson, Marquise Henderson plays running back there at Belton Homeopath. Absolutely. He's a heck of a running back too, man. He is a speedster. I'm just not sure he's going to play running back when he gets to Clemson. Do you think that Dabo needs to learn how to recruit the portal since it is different? To me, it's not about not knowing how to recruit it. if you're going to recruit the portal, you got to be fast. You got to be able, if kids want to take a visit or two, you got to be fast to get them on campus. That's one of the biggest things. Another thing is obviously the money. I thought Clemson's attempts in the portal this year kind of stemmed from their misses on the offensive line in the 2024 recruiting class. They weren't looking for guys who could come in and necessarily start next year. If you look at the guys they offered, the handful of offensive linemen they offered, there wasn't not a one of them guaranteed to come in here and start next year. They were all guys with multiple years of eligibility left who they wanted to help finish developing and possibly start next year. There was one of them that definitely wasn't going to start next year. But I don't know if it's so much about learning how needing to learn how to recruit it. I wasn't a big fan of that strategy. Maybe they just figured they'd take a swing, take their shot, and see if they could land somebody since they missed on so many offensive linemen in the 2024 class. I don't think you're going to have much success if that's your strategy. Um, Guys are going into the portal because they want to play, man. They're looking for more playing time and they're looking for bigger money. And they both go kind of hand in hand. The Rutledge kid who was supposed to visit Clemson, came from Middle Tennessee State and got in a wreck on the way back from Georgia Tech, and it screwed up his visit to Clemson. Ended up committing to Georgia Tech. He's going to start at Georgia Tech, or he's going to go into the spring as a starter. Dabo's not going to tell a kid like that he's going to be starting day one spring practice, especially when they got so many guys with so much experience coming back. So I don't know if it's that they don't know how to do it. I think it's more about the strategy they took. And I have a feeling that they knew going in they probably weren't going to be very successful, but they wanted to take their shot, see if they could hit on one. Didn't. Now, I'm not convinced, like I said a little while ago, I'm not convinced that the door is shut on them taking a defensive end before next year. They might wait and let Chris Rump evaluate what he has during the spring, and then go from there and decide maybe after spring practice when the next window opens. But if they go after an end, I kind of expected the strategy to be a little bit different. I think they'll go after somebody that can contribute next season and play right away. Because you're talking about a position where you're losing Xavier Thomas, you're losing Justin Masco. Really, all you have coming back is TJ Parker. You got Cade Denoff. He hasn't played a whole heck of a lot. And is anybody, does it give you the warm and fuzzies thinking about Cade Denoff being your starting defensive end next year? I don't think so. You got AJ Hoffler behind him, who did not play very much as a freshman last year. High ceiling, very little experience. Again, Caden Story was repping it in during bowl practice. Peter Woods is a guy Dabo's talked about moving outside. I'm not a big fan of that plan. So we'll see what they decide to do. I think they're going to let Chris Rump evaluate what he's got and during the spring and then make a call on that thing. And we'll see what they decide to do. But back to your original point or question, I'm not so sure it's that they don't know how to recruit it. It's more about the strategy they took and the guys that they targeted this time. I think that's more of a reason why they were so unsuccessful. Because again, guys enter the portal because they want more playing time, not to go somewhere else to continue developing. If you hit on one of those guys, great. And if you don't, you don't. Clemson ends up going out and getting a couple late ads on the offensive line in the 2024 class. And I love the kid that they flipped from Duke. I think he's going to be a really good player. And they think Watson Young. And I know people are going to kill him because he went to Daniel, but they think he can be a good center in a couple of years. They don't need him to be a good center next year. They need him to be 1, 2, 3 years from now. And they think he can be. We'll see if it plays out that way. Yep, Jason is looking like hot poop tonight, bro. I'm telling you, man. I told you I felt like I got hit by a Mack truck today. I've not felt well today. No dogs tonight, man. I locked them out. No boom shakalaka, man. I think I ate something that did not agree with me yesterday, and I paid for it last night. I've been paid for it today. Yeah, I did. I'll be shocked if that happens, man. I don't ever say never to anything, but that would very much surprise me. That would, if that would does end up happening, that's going to be brutal, man. Because you got to have three offensive coordinators 3 years in a row, man. That is definitely not what you want for an offense that needs to show some signs of growth next year. Yes, sir. Every Monday at 7. I'm here every Monday night at 7. Usually we just do them on YouTube, man, but tonight we put them on Facebook and a couple of one of the Facebook groups and Facebook page. We're back here Wednesday night at 7, me and Zach for Paul Talk. You'll be able to find us in the same spots. Every Monday I'm here pretty much, man, even on days like today when I feel like hell. Every now and then, if it's Christmas Day, like it was a couple weeks ago, we might skip. 99.9% of the time, we will be here each and every Monday, 7 o'clock, chopping it up the way we've done for the past year, man. I appreciate everybody who tunes in, man. Y'all, we have, like I said, every Monday, we have a pretty good time here on Monday nights. We have a pretty good crew that hangs out in here on Monday nights with us, man. We have some new guys here tonight. I appreciate y'all tuning in. Invite y'all back next week. Um, you know, Again, if you've not hit that subscribe button, please do so. Hit that like button. Even share it around if you don't mind. And heck, if you want to see me again next Monday, hit that bell. Give yourself a reminder, man. Again, always appreciate the interaction. Um, this show is always about letting the fan drive the conversation. And y'all have done a very good job of that. So till next time, I shall bid y'all farewell.